Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel and welcome to another reading vlog where I'm gonna be reading Warbreaker. So, Warbreaker is part of the Cosmere Universe, which is fantasy, and it has a bunch of series and also a bunch of standalones. And I've read both the Era 1 and Era 2 of the Mistborn series, and I've also read Elantris, A Hope of Elantris, and The Emperor's Soul. And honestly, I've loved all of the books that I've read from this universe, so I was very, very excited to get into Warbreaker. And also I definitely had, high expectations because, like I said, I've loved every book that I've read from the series, so I just expect great things. And I just want to say that there are definitely spoilers in this reading vlog, and let's get into it. Okay, so I am 34% into Warbreaker, and honestly, I'm at the stage where I'm kind of starting to understand what's happening, but still very confused, and so I don't really know how well I'm gonna be able to explain what's happening, or what I understand of it. But basically, in the world that this book is set, people who die in a heroic way, they come back to life, and they come back to life as gods, basically. And they don't remember their past life. They don't remember how they died or who they were or the people that they knew. And they can give a breath with a capital B, to someone to cure them, to save them, to whatever, when they achieve their goal. Because supposedly these people come back with a goal that they obviously don't remember, because they don't remember their death or their previous life or anything. And once they achieve their goal, they can give their breath to someone, and then they will die. And the breath is kind of, I guess, a life force, life essence. That's what I've gathered so far. And these gods, they have a king that they call the God King. And the God King is supposed to marry someone. And he had made a deal with a king. I mean, I don't know if he himself made the deal, but someone had made a deal with a king from another kingdom to marry one of his daughters, and supposedly it was gonna be his oldest daughter, called Vivenna, maybe. And she had she was 22, I think, pretty sure. And she, her whole life she has been trained to be the wife of this god king. But when it's time for her to go, her father actually decides to not send her, and he decides to send his youngest daughter instead, because he feels like Vivenna would be a good queen for their kingdom and should stay there. So he decides to send his youngest daughter, called Ciri, who is kind of a troublemaker and doesn't even know anything about the land of the gods. And so she's just, sent there to marry this god king and give him an heir. And, she has no idea what she's gonna find there. And Vivenna, obviously, is not happy about that either, about her younger sister being thrown into that. Not that she wanted to go, but she had kind of accepted her fate, and now it's happening to her younger sister, and she decides to run away and go to the city of the gods to save her sister, basically. And so Ciri is, in the area where the gods are, where the God King is, but he still hasn't really shown any interest in her. and like she's not supposed to talk to him. She's not supposed to really touch him other than like what she would have to have a child with him. And she hasn't even like seen his face completely, like he's always in the shadow. And that's happening. And her sister has gotten there to the city, and she has like seen her in the distance, but she hasn't yet talked to her. But she's being helped by two, I mean now three mercenaries who are just very funny. And these mercenaries are connected with the guy that appeared in the prologue. And that guy, he is, I don't remember exactly the name, an awakener? Possibly. Like he can take, or like I think he has to be given breath, like it has to be given, and he can like store breaths. And also like the gods, like they have a lot of breaths, and that's how they get like really powerful. And the gods, like they have to consume a breath like from someone each week or they die, and then they will just give it away when they are actually ready to die. And they have, like I said, a lot of breaths. The God King is the one that has the most, and that is why they're so powerful. And like their powers, their magic, they have to do with colors. They can like really see like colors really vividly, and I'm still not entirely sure of how that works. But yeah, the guy from the prologue, he's an awakener, so like he has breaths, and he can like put the breaths in inanimate objects and like kind of give them life, and then he can take the breath back. And he has a talking sword, which is so funny. Like the sword is really funny, and like the concept is really funny. And it's, I don't think like it talks out loud, but like they communicate. The guy and the sword, they communicate like telepathically, which I love. I absolutely love that. And the sword is also very funny. Like what we've gotten from the sword so far, he's very funny. But my favorite character has to be one of the gods, who's called Lightsong, and he's the god of bravery. And he's just like very reluctant to be a god. He's like he doesn't believe he's, you know, a god. Like he's just some guy who died and came back to life, and now like people worship him and, you know, want him to give them the breath. And he is really funny because he really doesn't want to be a god. And like the guy that is always with him, like their dynamic is also so funny. And like we have found out that that guy actually knew Lightsong like before he died, but he doesn't want to tell him anything because like the gods are not supposed to know about their past life. So he's not telling them anything, but like we know that he knows him or like knew him. And we also know that like the gods, they're supposed to like be able to kind of glimpse into the future. And so Lightsong, like he's been having some dreams about war, and if he's thinking that like if that's actually true and they can see the future, that is, you know, concerning, that is scary. And that is pretty much what's happening. I like a lot has been going on. I am overwhelmed, I am confused, but I am loving it. Like I am hooked. I read like these a little over 200 pages like basically in one sitting. Like I just stopped to eat, but other than that, like I just read this book because like I am absolutely obsessed with it. Like I love everything about it. Like the magic is so interesting, even though I'm still kind of confused about it. Like what I've learned is so interesting, and the world is also so cool. And like the thing with the colors and the magic, it's so fun. And I also really like, honestly, like I really like all the characters that we're following. And yeah, I'm having such a great time with this book. Like I am absolutely obsessed. I am hooked. I am having the best time, honestly. Like so good. It is so good. And I didn't even know like what it was about. I hadn't really read the synopsis. I just wanted to read it because it's part of the Cosmere, and I like want to read all the books in the Cosmere. So I wanted to read it, but I didn't really know what it was about. But like I'm hooked. I'm obsessed. I am having the best time ever. So I'm gonna keep reading it, and I will be back to update on what's going on and if I'm, you know, understanding things better. Okay, so I am 2/3 into Warbreaker, and first of all, I continue to absolutely love it. And something I forgot to mention, I think, is that when either the gods or just awakeners, they like take breath from someone, it doesn't kill the person to take like their breath, it just makes them drowse, which means that they, like, first of all, they are kind of gray looking, they kind of lose their color, and they, I mean, they say, or like some people say that they like lose their soul, but that is not really true. But they just feel more dull, I guess, like in every way. So there's that. I forgot to mention that because I think I said that like the gods have to take a breath from someone every week, every month, frequently. And so they're not just like killing people, but they are like taking kind of a life essence from people. But either way, moving on. In this second third, Ciri gets closer to the God King because like he basically wants her to teach him how to read and how to write. And then she finds out that no one can talk to him because they would find out that he had his tongue cut out by his priests. And so basically he's just kind of used as a puppet by the priests. And then someone there, like at the God King's palace, tells Ciri that it would be dangerous for both her and the God King if they did have a child. And before we get more into what happened to Ciri, I have to mention something else with Lightsong, because she goes talk to Lightsong, who continues to be my favorite character, by the way. I absolutely love him. But he, like, someone is killed at a palace of one of the gods, and Lightsong decides to like go investigate, and this is like the first time since he reawakened that he's been interested in literally anything and like doing anything. So he thinks that it might be connected to who he was in his previous life, like a detective or something. So that's also very interesting. But like I was saying, Ciri goes talk to Lightsong, and she wants to know more about the God Kings, like the previous ones, because she learns that basically all previous God Kings die very soon after they have an heir. And I mean, supposedly, like, none of the other can even like have heirs. They can't have children. Apparently, like, all just the God Kings can. So that's also weird. And so she learns about like some of the history of the God Kings and just the gods in general. But there's still like some questions that she doesn't have answers because no one really knows, or like it's not common knowledge. And that's basically like how the God Kings pass their power, like all of their breath, to their heirs. And so Ciri obviously still doesn't have all the answers, but she is trying to figure out a way to save both herself and the God King. And Lightsong, like, he definitely continues with his detective stuff, but he also like got interested with what Ciri was asking about, so he also wants to make sure like a war doesn't happen between their people and like Ciri's kingdom's people. And speaking of, Ravenna wants to overthrow the gods, basically, because it was never just about saving Ciri, like why she came to this city. It wasn't just about saving Ciri. She just didn't want to be unimportant. And she had like practiced her whole life to be the God King's wife, even though she didn't actually want it. Like, it was kind of like her purpose in life. That's the only thing she had ever practiced for, the only thing she had ever learned to do, or like to be. And so after she was no longer supposed to marry the God King, she sort of, like I said, became unimportant because, I mean, what was her purpose now, you know? So she doesn't want that. And so she wants to overthrow the kings and, kind of start a war, which is what the others are trying to stop. But then, like, she meets with a lot of people from, like, her kingdom that are in that city, like, with her mercenaries and everything. But then she's actually betrayed by the mercenaries because they apparently were paid by someone else who wants to start the war to basically use Vivenna as just the face of this war to come. But she finds out that they were, actually, she doesn't really find out that they're kind of betraying her. She just finds out that they're like in a weird situation, and so they just think that she found out that they're betraying her, so they told her that and attacked her. But she was actually able to control the lifeless soldier that they had there and to like attack the mercenaries, and she's able to escape. But she's not like all alone in a city that she doesn't know well, in a place she doesn't like, with people she doesn't trust. And so she's definitely not in a good situation. But honestly, like, no one really is in a good situation in this book, none of the characters that I care about. So I am concerned, but I am absolutely loving this book, like still loving it just as much or even more. And like, this is where I'm at, and I am loving it so much. Like, even in the first third of the book, this was already giving me like the 5-star feelings, and it's definitely continuing to give me the 5-star feelings. So I am so excited to keep reading this, and this is so interesting now that like I understand the magic more. And I mean, I don't understand it completely, but I understand it better, and I am just so excited about all of this. And the world is so interesting, the magic is so interesting, the characters are so interesting as well. I really, really like Ciri, and now that I kind of got to know the God King, I also really like him. I love Lightsong, like he and his high priests, they're everything to me. And Vivenna, I have mixed feelings about, but she's also very like interesting to follow as a character. Not sure I love her, but I love to follow her chapters, So yeah, I am having the time of my life. I am loving every second of reading this book. And yeah, I'm very, very excited to see where this goes. And yeah, I will update you again when I finish it, probably, and let you know how this mess gets resolved or not, who knows, and what I think about it. Okay, so I have finished Warbreaker, and I have so much to talk about because so much happened in this last third. Like, it was absolutely insane. So basically, starting off, I think we actually started this last third with Vivenna, and she has been living on the streets after she was able to run away from the mercenaries. She, like I said, I think I said she was like all alone in a city where she didn't know like anyone else other than the people who had betrayed her. So she had nowhere to go. She had no one to help her. And so she was just living on the streets. She was, struggling until Vasher found her. And Vasher is the guy who has the like sentient sword. And he finds her and he helps her, and he wants to find out who like hired the mercenaries to start the war, like to incite the war to start. And he also teaches her how to use the breaths, how to awaken objects in, a useful way. And back at the palace, Ciri is, still trying to save herself and the God King. And she learns that basically the God Kings are kind of just a vessel for all of the breaths that they hold. And they do not actually have children. Like I think I said, they can't really have children. So the priests find, like once the priests find a awakened baby, they see that as a sign that it's time for a new God King, basically. And they have already found that baby, to which they will transfer the breaths of the current God King. And they are going to announce to the people that Ciri is pregnant, because she obviously doesn't actually need to be pregnant. She, like, the people just need to believe that she is, and then they will, bring that baby that they have found, and make it the new God King. And then Vasher decides to go to the palace to save Ciri, but he's actually caught by the mercenaries and he is basically taken as a prisoner by them. And at the same time, kind of the same time, Lightsong and his high priest are like in the tunnels under the palace trying to sneak in, trying to figure out what's happening. And they see that one of the other gods, or a goddess in this case, is being like questioned, and the people who are like questioning her and torturing her, they actually end up killing her, and they take both Lightsong and his high priest as prisoners. And with that, they actually take like Lightsong's password for the lifeless army because they want to use it to invade the other kingdom, the one that like Ciri and Vivenna are from. And so they take that password, and then we actually learn who Lightsong used to be. So he used to be a scribe, and his high priest, Larimar, was actually his brother. And the way that Lightsong died, the like heroic thing that he did, was basically he died to save his niece, so like Larimar's daughter, and that is why he became a god. And while all of that is happening, Ciri is like supposedly being taken to a safe place, but then she finds out who actually like started inciting the war, who really wants the war, and it's like the one person she thought that she could trust in the like God King's palace. So, you know, there's that whole kind of betrayal because she was just being used to believe that she could trust that person, and obviously not. And also she was just being used by the priests and by those people as well, and by everyone. And she's also like taken as a prisoner, and they also take the God King and they put him in like the same prison as Lightsong and Larimar. And basically like Lightsong finally, like after learning who he used to be and like what he did, he finally like really believes in himself to be a god and to be powerful and to be, you know, a good person, and he finds his purpose kind of. And so he uses his breaths to heal the God King, and that way like it restores the God King's tongue and he's able to speak and he's able to like give commands, and he is basically able to like leave the prison, like escape, and to save Ciri. And at the same time, like Vivenna takes the sword, like the sentient sword, to go save Vasher. And the sword basically was actually like awakened with breaths, but like it used so many breaths that the sword was not only like awakened with the breaths, like it was enough to make it sentient, which is so cool, by the way. And so Vivenna does save Vasher, and now they want to raise their own army of lifeless to stop the one that is like already on its way to invade the other kingdom. And Vasher thinks that the God King could be the one to help them because like he has so many breaths that he alone could raise the army. And then we learn that Vasher is actually like an extremely old returned, and he was able to end the previous war by basically leaving like bones encased in statues, and those are the statues slash bones that he wants to use to create the lifeless army, because I mean they will be basically indestructible because they are like, you know, in stone. So they do talk to the God King, they do raise their army, and the army is like on its way to kill the other army, basically to stop that and to stop the war. And that is basically like how it ends in that sense, in that part of the plot. And then we learn that Vasher is gonna go like on his own way, on like his own mission, and Vivenna wants to go with him because she's not really like Princess Vivenna anymore. She has changed, she's a different person. She doesn't want to just, you know, sit in her kingdom doing the stuff that she was supposed to do. She wants to, you know, go out and know the world and use her new powers. And that is also how it ends in that regard. So that is pretty much what happened in this book, and let's go into my final thoughts. So starting off with the characters, and starting off with Ciri, who is the first character that we follow for a bit of time. I absolutely loved her from the beginning. Like, I loved her in the beginning, I loved her in the middle, I loved her in the end, I loved her like the whole time. But she definitely like changed a lot. She definitely grew a lot because she was just, happy to be unimportant in the beginning. She was just, living her own life, not wanting to really be bothered by anything. And by the end, she was like an actual queen, and she was, wanting to save two kingdoms and like the people in two kingdoms. And she like really changed a lot. She grew a lot, and I absolutely loved her like the whole way through. And the God King, like, he definitely was very mysterious in the beginning. I didn't know what to think of him, but like everyone said like he was so dangerous. He could just order you to be killed if you slightly bothered him. But I thought that that was probably not gonna be the case, and it definitely wasn't. But obviously, I wasn't sure, so I was still kind of hesitant to like him. But yeah, he was definitely like a good person, but he was very naive, I guess, in the beginning, and he also really changed a lot. He also grew a lot, and I also really really like him, and I really like Siri and the God King's like interactions and their dynamic. I also really like that. And then Vasher was definitely like such an interesting character. Like, I was hooked from the prologue, and the prologue was following him, so I was, really interested in his character. And he was very also mysterious. Like, for such a long time, I didn't really know who he was or even like what he wanted. But the reveal of like who he actually was so cool, and he was, like I said, such an interesting character to follow as well. And his sword was also so cool. It was like the sword was so funny, and like because the sword was basically created to destroy evil, it's like its mission, it's to destroy evil, but it doesn't really know what evil is. So it's really funny to also follow the sword and like their conversations in their heads. And then it also started talking to Vivenna. It was also so cool. And Vivenna, well, she definitely grew on me because I didn't like particularly love her in the beginning, but she, just like all the other characters or almost all the other characters, like really changed throughout the book. And she definitely really really grew on me. And yeah, by the end I also really liked her. She was still not my favorite character, but I did like her at the end. And my favorite character was, like I said, I think from the beginning, Lightsong. Like, he was so funny, but at the same time, like, he had a lot of depth. And I absolutely loved his dynamic with Larimar as well. And I was obviously devastated that he died, but I was pretty sure that he would, because as soon as we learned that basically the awakened, the gods, they give away their breaths when they once they find their purpose, like, I knew that, based on what his character was, just being very funny, just, not caring about anything, like, I knew that at the end he was gonna find his purpose and he was gonna die. And he did. And yeah, like, me knowing it didn't make it, or like not knowing it, but thinking it didn't make it any less sad. But he died like in a heroic way twice. So he's an absolute icon, and for sure my favorite character. Like, I love every second of following him. Like, all of the chapters in his POV were so good. Definitely my favorite. And yeah, I absolutely love him. And I mean, I absolutely love the book. Like, I also really love the world and the magic. Like, it was so interesting. And the pacing I thought was also perfect because I was like hooked. I was obsessed with every single page. Like, every second that I was reading this book, I was loving it. I was intrigued. I was on the edge of my seat. I loved every second. And the ending, like, it was definitely kind of an open ending, but I think there is supposed to be a sequel, or at least there was supposed to be a sequel. I'm not entirely sure what state that is in, but I mean, I hope we get more from these characters. I mean, maybe we already do in other books that I haven't read. I don't know. But yeah, I definitely want to learn more about this. And I did think that, maybe the ending was like a little bit rushed. So, like, when I finished reading it, I wasn't really sure what to rate it, if I was gonna give it 4.5 or 5 stars, just because I thought the ending was, maybe a bit rushed. Like, after this whole like huge book. I thought the ending was maybe a bit rushed, but the truth is it gave me like the 5-star feeling from the beginning of the book, and it has been a few days and I still haven't stopped thinking about it. So I think I'm just gonna give it 5 stars because I absolutely loved it. And so yeah, that is everything for this video, everything for this book. And so yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you have enjoyed it, and if you did, give it a like and subscribe, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!